There's a specific kind of confusion that comes with missing someone who hurt you. It doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in when you're doing something ordinary, when a song plays, when you notice a habit you picked up from them, when you reach for your phone without thinking. You might tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way, that missing them doesn't make sense after everything that happened, after the words that cut, after the moments you felt small, after the times you questioned yourself because of them. And yet, the feeling is still there. That's often the part that hurts the most. Not just that they hurt you, but that some part of you still reaches for them anyway, as if your body remembers something your mind is trying hard to forget, as if closeness and pain got tangled together and never fully separated. You might feel embarrassed by this, ashamed even. You might wonder what it says about you that you can miss someone who caused you so much distress. You might ask yourself why you weren't strong enough to let go cleanly, why it still pulls at you when you know better. But this feeling didn't come from weakness. It came from attachment, from time spent, from moments that mattered to you, even if they were mixed with hurt. You didn't imagine those moments. They were real. And your nervous system doesn't erase real things just because they ended badly. Sometimes you miss the version of them you hoped they would be. Sometimes you miss who you were when you were trying to make it work. Sometimes you just miss not being alone in the way you were with them, even if being together wasn't safe. You might replay good memories and immediately feel guilty for them, like enjoying those moments somehow erases the harm. Like remembering anything fond means you're excusing what they did. That inner conflict can be exhausting. Loving and protecting yourself can start to feel like opposing tasks. And under all of that, there's often grief. Not just for the person, but for the future you imagined, for the version of connection you wanted, for the hope you invested and didn't get back. That grief doesn't disappear just because the relationship wasn't healthy. If you're here right now, missing someone who hurt you, you're not failing at healing. You're experiencing something very human, something that doesn't follow rules or timelines, something that doesn't resolve just because you understand it intellectually. This is the place where many people feel lost, where the pain doesn't fit neatly into good or bad, where you can hold hurt and longing at the same time, and that can feel incredibly lonely. But you're not alone in this moment. This feeling has a history, and it deserves to be acknowledged before anything else can happen. Missing someone who hurt you often keeps you stuck in a place you thought you'd already left. Even after the relationship ended, part of you stays there, replaying conversations, rewriting moments, wondering if you misunderstood something, wondering if it could have turned out differently. You might catch yourself defending them in your own head, minimizing what happened, telling yourself it wasn't that bad, or that they didn't mean it, or that you were too sensitive. These thoughts don't come from clarity. They come from wanting the pain to make sense. Because if you can explain it, maybe you can soften it. If you can justify it, maybe you don't have to grieve it. So you linger, emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically, through messages you don't send or places you still avoid because they feel too close to them. You tell yourself you're just processing, but underneath, there's often a hope you don't want to name, a hope that something might still change, or that the hurt might somehow turn into understanding. Staying like this can feel safer than fully letting go. Letting go means accepting that what you wanted isn't coming back, that the person you missed is inseparable from the pain they caused, that the version you needed them to be doesn't exist in the way you hoped. And that's a hard thing to sit with. So instead, you stay halfway, not reaching out, but not moving on, not excusing what they did, but not releasing them either. You live in the space between remembering and protecting yourself, between longing and self-respect. You might judge yourself for this, tell yourself you're dragging it out, that you should be further along by now. But staying longer than you wanted to is often what happens when something mattered deeply and ended without the care it deserved. You didn't stay because you enjoyed the pain. You stayed because leaving meant losing something you were still holding inside. And that makes sense, even if it hurts. Missing someone who hurt you has a way of draining you slowly. Not all at once, not in a way that's easy to point to. It shows up in the background of your days, in how much energy it takes just to stay present. You might notice how often your thoughts circle back to them without asking permission. In moments when you're tired, when you're alone, when something reminds you of what you shared. It can feel like your mind keeps reopening a door you're trying to keep closed, not to torture you, but because it hasn't learned yet where to rest. There's a cost to carrying this. You hesitate to trust your own feelings. When you miss them, you question yourself. When you feel angry, you soften it. When you feel hurt, you downplay it. You start editing your emotions before they even fully arrive, as if being honest with yourself might lead you somewhere unsafe. It can make you doubt your judgment. You wonder how you could care so deeply about someone who caused you pain. You replay signs you ignored, moments you explained away. And slowly, the story shifts from what they did to what you think you failed to see. That self-blame can be heavy. You might pull back from others without meaning to, not because you don't want connection, but because you're tired of explaining yourself, tired of saying you're fine when you're not, tired of carrying a grief that doesn't look like grief from the outside. There's also the exhaustion of holding two truths at once, that you miss them, and that being with them hurt you, that you cared, and that you needed to leave. Keeping both of those alive inside you takes more strength than it looks like. Over time, this can leave you feeling smaller, less sure of yourself, less trusting of your instincts. You might feel like you're always bracing for something, waiting for the ache to spike again, wondering when it will finally let you go. This is the quiet cost of missing someone who hurt you. Not just the sadness, but the way it slowly teaches you to question yourself. And you've been carrying that quietly, often without anyone noticing. At some point, something begins to loosen, even if you don't notice it right away. Not because the missing stops, not because the pain suddenly makes sense, but because carrying both the longing and the hurt starts to feel heavier than facing the truth you've been circling around. The truth doesn't arrive as a decision. It doesn't sound like clarity. It doesn't tell you what to do next. It shows up as tiredness, a deep, quiet tiredness that comes from holding on for too long, from revisiting the same memories, the same conversations, the same unanswered questions, and realizing they no longer give you anything back. You might notice that you don't rush to defend them as quickly as before. When a memory surfaces, you let it sit there without fixing it or rewriting it. You remember the closeness, you remember the harm, and for the first time, you allow both to exist without trying to make one cancel the other out. This can feel strange, even uncomfortable. For a long time, missing them may have felt like the only way to stay connected to what mattered, like letting go would erase something important. But now, something in you starts to understand that holding on isn't the same as honoring what you felt. You might still think about them often. You might still feel a pull in moments of quiet. But the pull doesn't feel as commanding. It doesn't drag you into the same spiral. It doesn't demand that you reach out, explain yourself, or relive the hurt just to feel close again. There's a subtle shift in how you treat yourself here. When the missing shows up, you don't immediately judge it. You don't scold yourself for feeling it. You don't tell yourself you're failing at healing. You recognize it as a feeling that's passing through, not something you have to act on. You also begin to notice how much effort it used to take to stay emotionally tied to someone who hurt you. How much energy went into hoping, waiting, interpreting, excusing. And without making a dramatic choice, you start to reclaim some of that energy simply by not feeding the loop anymore. This doesn't feel like strength. It feels like relief mixed with sadness. Relief that you don't have to keep proving anything. Sadness that something you cared about couldn't be what you needed. Both feelings can exist at the same time, without one invalidating the other. You start to see that missing someone doesn't mean you were wrong to leave. It doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. It means your heart stayed attached longer than the situation could safely hold. And that's not a flaw. That's how attachment works when it's been real. This is the smallest shift. Not closure, not forgiveness. Just a little more space inside yourself. Enough space to breathe. You're still missing them. Or maybe not all the time, but enough that you notice it. Enough that it still surprises you when it shows up. The difference now is that it doesn't pull you apart the way it used to. It doesn't erase everything else you know to be true. You can hold the memory of them without immediately collapsing into it. You can acknowledge what you felt without pretending it was all good or all bad. You don't need to rewrite the past to survive the present anymore. There's a quiet steadiness here, not because the hurt is gone, but because you've stopped fighting yourself over it. You're no longer trying to force your feelings into something more acceptable or more resolved. You let them be what they are, without turning them into a verdict about who you are or what you deserve. You might still feel a wave of longing now and then, a moment where you wish things had been different, where you miss the closeness, the familiarity, the way they once felt like home. And when that happens, you don't shame yourself for it. You don't rush to push it away. You recognize it as part of your history, not a threat to your future. You also feel clearer about the pain, not in a sharp, analytical way, more like a settled knowing. You remember how you felt with them, how often you doubted yourself, how much you tried to make things work by shrinking parts of who you were. That clarity doesn't harden you, it anchors you. You're not angry all the time, you're not bitter, you're not closed off. You're just more honest with yourself about what you can't go back to, about what you can't unsee now that you've seen it, about what it would cost you to return. There's grief here. There always will be. But it's no longer consuming everything. It sits beside other things again. Your days, your breath, small moments of ease you didn't expect to feel yet. You start to notice that you're not living entirely in the past anymore. You don't owe anyone an explanation for where you are now. Not for still missing them. Not for choosing yourself. Both can exist at the same time without canceling each other out. You didn't fail because you cared. You didn't lose because you left. You're here because you listened to something inside you that wanted safety, even if it took time to understand what that meant. And for now, that's enough. This is where things are clear again.